Very good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Kath. I'm sure you know me by now. This is part 2 of our Herd Companion suite of webinars that we've just started this autumn. If you haven't seen part 1, the video will be going up on YouTube, and I will send the link to everybody that's registered for this one, so you can watch that back whenever. And this one is also recorded, so you can also catch up and either watch again or see it in slow motion, as it were, later on. Slightly different format today. I've had a bit of a laptop disaster this morning, so I've got another one. I haven't got my PowerPoint, which I normally do as an intro, but just to say that putting questions on the control panel on the right hand side of your screen at any time. I will come to those at the end, as is the normal procedure for me, and then I'm happy to go through those with you. Or equally, if you think of something afterwards, you can always drop me a line or give NMR a call to ask any questions. So we're carrying on with the Herd Companion theme. I'm just checking my control panel in case I've omitted something. So I'm on a different laptop today, so it's all a bit different, but no, all looking good so far. So we're looking a bit more in depth today, straight into Herd Companion here. If you haven't got access to Herd Companion, give NMR software support a ring. We can set you up very quickly. And if you're a farmer, you can access your own data. If you're a vet or a consultant, you've got access to lots of herds. This is the demo herd, which anybody can use. You just click on the demo if you want to have a play with this one. You can't break it. It's not got data entry enabled, so it's very good to have a browse. So on this one, first of all, I wanted to show you the cell count info, which is a bit more in depth. Last time we looked at the Swift cell checker, which shows you your cell count report, so a list of cows in cell count order and proportion of the herd that have gone over that threshold of 200, and that can be adjusted. So today, if we go into production, we have, so that SCC report was your main, as I say, the sort of Swift cell check. It's a place most people go to as soon as the recording's finished and you get your notification. That's all your details on what's been happening per cow. The one I want to look at today is just down from there, SCC Status. Here we go. So it looks quite similar to start with. Again, we've got a threshold of 200, so this applies to this particular page, and you can adjust that to suit. The Swift cell checker that you're probably familiar with is on this section as well. And this used to be called Health Monitor when we had the old style Herd Companion. So if you've been around as long as I have, you'll be familiar with that potentially. But we've just upgraded it. We've replaced all the old servers behind the scenes. So this is much more modern approach and in keeping with the rest of Herd Companion. So the SCC Status looks back for a couple of years. We've got February 21 here right to present day. And the herd is split into these main categories. So chronic, repeat, first, and new. And it's very easy then to see if you've got peaks and troughs, particularly the red area. So a chronic cow is one whose cell count was high this month and last month, or this recording, last recording, depending on how frequently you do it. You can hover the mouse over here and see proportion of the herd. So we've peaked back in May, about 14% of the herd. But right down now, very little going on here. A repeat cow, in contrast, was high this month, low last month, but had a previous high. So a repeat case coming in potentially. A first infection, that's the little yellow bit. So interestingly, that's crept up a little bit now, but has had no problem whatsoever for the last year or so. So that's the very first recording after a calving comes in high. So that relates to your dry cow therapy, your dry cow status as well, which we'll see in a second. And then you've got new, the grey or sort of purpley stripy area, that one there. So again, we've whittled that down to nothing really. So a new case, it's come up over that threshold for the first time in her lactation, but she's had one or more previous tests that were low. Yeah, so not the first recording, which is that one, but it's a subsequent one. So it popped up out of nowhere potentially. And then you've got the green, hopefully mountainous regions that are low, absolutely cleared up, no bother at all. So that gives you a seasonal trend. And if we scroll down, we can see then the raw data behind it. So as a summary, and sometimes it's even easier. I mean, the graphs are fantastic, but you can often just have a scan on your figures here So chronics, this then puts into numbers the graph above. So we can see on the whole, chronics are being managed perfectly now, but we have had a peak back in May, and yeah, fairly consistent here. Repeat wise, again, similar sort of pattern, it's come up. Firsts, we've got a new problem coming in with the firsts here. So you can identify who the cows are in the other section, Swift Sale Checker. I'm not going to go into that now, but that will give a status of either chronic, repeat, first or new on each of the cows listed on the sale count report. If we then look at dry period, so what's happening with these fresh cows? We've got quite a few that are coming in high. We'll go on to this one. And this will then load to show us some other graphs looking at the dry period. So what we're able to assess is, we don't have any medicine information, but that's where your vet can come in and assess if that is the issue. How are we managing selective dry co-therapy? But what we do have is across the dry period, the cell count before drying off, is it high or low? Simple question really. Compared to the cell count after calving. So across the dry period, we're then looking at whether we've got a protection rate, so that's your low to low cows. We've got an infection rate, we've got low to high, consistently high, we've got high to high here, or a cure rate, which would be high to low. So similar sort of idea, we can see trend over time. And again, interestingly, we had a bit of a problem back here in July last year, but currently everything fine, although it is slightly rising at this one, and so is the low to high. So that would then equate to more cows coming in as a first, where their very first recording is high as well. So this is one to discuss, with your advisor or your vet as to what these trends actually mean in real terms for protecting your cows, or is it something to do with the fresh calving environment, different type of bacteria maybe, or something raising those cell counts. So these graphs here, very simple really, is just putting those into sort of 3-month blocks. So cell counts at drying off, a good proportion there are low, a few higher ones. So you can always use this as a benchmark if you like, in terms of saying, right, this is Hartpury University, our demo herd, so how do my graphs compare to them? So 50-50 for cure rate, and protection on the whole pretty good. So there's there could be some areas to look at there. Coming down a little bit further, we then have a table very similar to all the other tables that you see on Herd Companion. This one has a grouping set in already. So if you remember last time, and if you haven't seen it, do go back and have a watch, where you can group by on any particular column on Herd Companion tables. So this is grouped by the cell count change, which then automatically puts them into those segments. So low to high, there are 4 cows. And the way I read this table generally is to work backwards. So the second last cell count in the previous lactation was nice and low. The last cell count in the previous, on the whole, low as well. Then we were dried off. We then had first cell count, this lactation, so this is where they've come in high. The numbers in brackets are days in milk, so that was their position. So some of these are 30 days in, so you might have expected them to settle perhaps by then. And the second lactation, second cell count, we haven't got to yet. So this is, very, very early days, but at least we've then got something, early indications we can do something about it potentially. In contrast, we've got more cows at the bottom end of the table, which is great. There's 20 in the low to low region, so they've carved in absolutely no problem at all. So it's all about proportions and trends and what's happening, whether it's a repeat occurrence every summer or something like that. So hopefully all this data can assist you in those kind of decisions. Now if I go back up to the top, so that's our move my mouse out the way, that's our health monitor section. So just to recap, under production, SCC report was your individual cows, your normal cell count report, and SCC status and dry period is where we are now. The next section I wanted to show you, quite in contrast, is called Ingenious, to do with breeding and genomics. Now, if I go into here and then across to this one, we've got 3 sections: herd status, and a lot of this in fact, all of this really can be seen for any herd recording with PTA information. You don't have to do genetic testing to see all of this, so do go and have a look. However, the more genomics you do, the more accurate these figures, and the earlier you can do something about choosing your breeding heifers and that kind of thing. So herd status, very straightforward here. We've got a PLI of 118. This is the herd average for the cows. Now I've got this very pretty donut pie chart, whatever you want to call it, split into those segments that make up the PLI, so different colours here. And it benchmarks compared to the national average. So if I just scroll down a fraction, you can have a read of the wording. The wording tells you exactly what you're looking at. Okay, so this, as I say, is available to anybody on Herd Companion, so anybody recording with NMR full recording. We can then see, compared to the national average, this herd is in the top percentiles for fertility and for lifespan. So if all 4 coloured blocks are in, we're in the top 25%. We have potentially work to do with udder health. We're in the sort of 50% region there. And the same, now depending on the colour of your screen, these 3 are blue, but they are slightly different shades of blue. So butterfat, milk and protein, so again 50% values. But green maintenance, we're high as well. So just an interesting comparison. I mean, PLI 118 is very good anyway. Over on this side, we have an age graph with our reliability for those PLIs and a benchmark as well, so like a national average figure for the red line. Now that's non-genomically tested. So the point here, you can see where this shoots up to 65% for cows at 69 months, so about 5 years. And generally on the whole for this one, they're doing some genomic testing, so they've got a higher reliability than the national average anyway. But you can really see the difference. If you start to test your heifers early, you're going to have that blue line a lot higher at this end because you're able to read in those genomic results much more sooner. I go back up to the top. We've then got our 3 sections all in one place anyway. So genetic progress, the next one. So how have we fared over time? And there's a real striking graph in here, actually. I was having a look earlier. So again, it's PLI for this herd. Yeah, took a bit of a dive, but now it's back on track. So interesting to know what happened here, really, with the Hartbury data. So this is PLI by age. So you've got older cows here. We've come right down, but actually, in the younger heifers, we're now starting to perhaps genomically test. So we've got an increase in PLI already for those age ranges there. You can track on top of that a trend graph, which probably look very similar. Yeah, so on the down overall, that dip there hasn't helped. Or again, you can break it down by components. So we know, for example, our maintenance was very good. Now, actually, yeah, so it's been boosted by this figure here. If I then go to national comparison, so we love a bit of benchmarking here at NMR, we can see where do we sit compared to top 10% nationally, or right through to the tail end of the graph here. So the yellow blocks indicate where your herd is. So PLI, we're up there, and it just reflects really what we saw in the original pie chart. And equally, we can see, yeah, milk, fat, protein, we knew we were kind of sort of 50-50 for those. Your averages are down here. So number of animals, 165, average PLI, 118. So that, excuse me, all tallies with the other figures. And again, just read the boxes. They will, the text here will tell you exactly what you're seeing. This is exactly the same as the graph at the front. We've just split the percentiles into 10% ranges. So it just gives you a more defined graph. And then the other good thing you can do, this is for Holstein cows. We have quite a few different breeds in here, so you can compare yourself to the more appropriate breed where applicable, and you can also view your heifers. So if I change that one, that alters the graph, and then you'll see this bit changes down here as well. So 157 heifers, our PLI average is 249 compared to the cows in the herd. On to spread. So we've got an average, but an average is always a fairly diluted figure. So this gives us a range within the herd for the cows. Now, when you first, if you've never looked at this, when you first come in, you might find you click on spread and you can't see a graph. So it's kind of a little bit strange, but you just click in the animal evaluation, click save, go back into here, and then your spread graph will be enabled. Because what it's doing, it's which will all be, it makes sense in a minute, is it's looking at cows in these 3 breeding groups, but we kind of have to just tap into there, run it, and then come back into here. But again, any queries on that, or if you can't see the data that you're expecting, then do give us a call. So the average of 162 animals is 116. We've got a range right from -150 to 420, and you can then hover to see, right, well, how many animals in each. So they're fairly evenly split, aren't they? Also, we can have a look at our different components of PLI. So if we look at fertility, which we know was quite high, yeah, you can see there's more of a bell-shaped curve, more of a bias towards the top end here. Okay, now this is where the fun starts. You can really have a good play with this next section. We go into animal evaluation. Now, again, this is all moved around, so just bear with me while I set this. When you first come in, there we go, you'll see something similar to this. We have the herd split into 3 breeding groups. So you've got green, amber, and red. So 33.3% of the herd split evenly. So the idea is here that we want to set our boundaries, if you like, for PLI for in each of these breeding groups. So it might be then that our green high flyers are going to be all bred to sex semen, and maybe we're going to put the red ones to beef, for example. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that's one idea. So what on earth are all of these figures? Well, at the moment, now let me just untick these. That may make a difference to our graph anyway. Yes, it does. Right, so don't worry about the fact that these have all changed, because you can adjust exactly what criteria you want for each group. I'm just starting with PLI, but you can of course focus on different elements of that. But probably best to start with this one for now. The range with this herd is from -136, that's the bottom cow in the herd, and it includes heifers at the moment, right through to 454. So that's what those figures mean there. As it currently looks, we've got then our red group from -136 to -38. So I hover that over, that's 8% of the herd, 23 cows. We then have a yellow group, -38 to 152. And then your top green group is 152 to 454. So the first thing you might want to do is say, well, I only want to look at my cows, or I only want to look at my heifers. So animals selected, come into this box here, and then choose maybe your breed specific, or maybe you don't want young stock. I can untick those and just have cows, or you could do it by PLI type. So that will reduce our selection. I'm going to leave mine back in actually, just for now. Apply your changes, and then you can set your parameters. So this bottom figure, that's the bottom cow in the herd in our selection. That's not going to change. But if I move this slider along, if I go to the left, you see it gets smaller because our group range is changing down. Or I might go the other way and make it bigger if I want more cows in that group. So you can choose very precisely what your cutoffs are. As a little tip, I'm dragging this with the mouse, which is a little bit fiddly. But if you click on that slider and use the arrow key, so just tapping on my arrow key at the moment, I can be really precise and get to exactly 10 or whatever range I want. And then the top end, I might want to whiz along up there and get to 200 maybe. So whatever settings for your herd, absolutely fine. So once you're happy, this is a slider, incidentally. Once you're happy with these selections, yeah, we've got a range of 3 different groups. We then apply slider changes to grid. So just click on that blue button. Nothing obvious will happen. But what we have down here is then a list of those cows and heifers, I've got everybody, in PLI descending order. So you can just make out there's the little arrow PLI. So 454, correlates with this figure up here. Okay, so the idea here in this grid is we can scroll through the whole herd, and it works the same way as any herd companion grid. So you see we've got 34 pages at the moment. Actually, I don't know that it does, having said that. Oh yeah, there we go, all. So if you want to, it's normally over that side. If you want a whole great big long list of all those cows, you can just select all, or if you just want 100 to a page, whatever. So if I make it 20, you'll see then we've got 20 to a page. So it might be, then we're looking at individual cows here for a second, just to say, yes, these are all my heifers. These are my high-flying animals. I'm happy for these to stay in my green breeding group. However, I get to this animal. For whatever reason, I might want her put into group 2. So it could be entirely subjective, something about that cow you just don't want to breed a particular trait from her, put her into group 2 or even group 3, that's fine. So you're making individual changes here to suit your particular style of animal. Just don't like the look of 5850, I'm not gonna breed from her again, or whatever it is. Obviously it should be a bit more scientific than that, but you get the idea. So you can manually override the PLI rating in a sense. Now that we've made those changes there, you don't have to do that, of course. You can just totally rely on the figures here. We then apply grid changes to pie chart. Now, before I click that, if you just watch the pie chart ever so slightly, that's going to move because those changes I've made, we've now put those cows into that other breeding group. Once we're happy with all of these, and you can come into here at any time and adjust everything, but do save as you go, save selections, because it can take quite a while to get it precisely to how you want it. So move your sliders to suit, apply changes to grid, just check individual cows, save your selections. Then go to animal summary, and you'll see then a count of how many cows are in each group, the average for each of those group areas for PLI, and then your list of cows. Now they're in line number order, but you can see which group they've been assigned to. Some of them have got a little G, which tells me they've been genomically tested as well, so they'll have a G PLI figure also. So the best advice I can give you here is to export this table into Excel if you want, or as a PDF, probably Excel, and then data can be manipulated a little bit better, and give that to your breeding advisor to say, right, this is based on PLI, these are my 3 breeding groups, what are we going to do with these? So that any time, if you come back into here and decide, no, actually I want to change all my settings, I've had a chat to my breeding advisor, we've gone down a different route slightly, then you've got those original changes, but you can come back in and override it at any time. But it might be worth having a comparison between the two. So save as you go, as with all things. The other thing as well then, if I go back up to my menu and have a look at my cows to serve, we have a genetic group applied. So all of those changes will then be reflected in here. So when it comes to doing your breeding, the cows to serve, you can just, again, filter out. So it might be you just want to look at group 1 in isolation. Sorry, that's still loading. Come on, there we go. So we use our filter, group 1, that's an equal to, and then you can see I've got 15 animals in there. There may well be some animals in your herd not assigned to a group. Now, if I go back in, so under breeding, animal evaluation, this is where data quality becomes really important. So if we go back to our animal summary, yeah, see, no group, we've got 50 cows. So if they're missing some bits of information like a sire maybe, dam, that kind of thing, we can't assign them to a group. So if you're seeing an awful lot of cows in that window, then talk to us and we can hopefully get some more information on those to fill in the gaps, as it were. Okay, so that's our breeding side. Third area today, the third and final area, is the KPIs, where we can do a bit more benchmarking. So this is in several places. Breeding and fertility again, we have KPIs here. I'll just show you the other two. Herd performance, KPIs, and I think production it's under KPIs as well. They're all correct. They're all the same. Doesn't matter how you get there. Just, you know, multi topics really. So the KPIs, this has also been changed fairly recently and tidied up, made much more modern. These are split into production KPIs and fertility, and we have then rolling 12-month values for the herd. So you'll see it sort of places it at the end of each month. It will always look a month behind from where you actually are. So even if you record on the 31st of August, that's not finished yet. So it can only go up to 31st of July. So that's typical for everybody. So these are, as I say, rolling 12-month averages for this herd. So we've got some really useful stuff in here: milk per cow per year of life, 3 or 5 day yield, protein qualities, average cell count, etc. And then if I go up to fertility, so we've got a few fertility KPIs in here: proportion of the herd in parity 1, so that's lactation 1, average lactation numbers, age at first calving, calving interval. Then we have a funny one here: calving interval less than 385%, which is a roundabout way of saying 100-day in calf rate. So why didn't we put 100-day in calf rate, you may well ask? Well, this is quite historic. So the calculations, if you look at 100-day in calf rate from a piece of software, you might find quite a different figure, because it's a bit more real time. You know, all the cows at 100 days now, are they in calf, yes or no? This one waits until they calve in, works backwards to say, well, your calving interval was under 385 days, therefore you must have got in calf by 100 days with a 280-day gestation period. So that's kind of how it's calculated. So some of these figures will be historic, and of course they're rolling 12 months, so they are watered down, you know, compared to maybe some other bits and pieces, but it gives you a comparison nonetheless. Now we have some KPI graphs, so you can work through these in any order, but just kind of logic follows really. So for a particular parameter, so I'm in milk per cow per year of life, we can change that to all of the parameters now listed together. So if I pick out, say, cell count, this is the graph for my herd. There we go. Well, that's also very interesting. We've really reached a pinnacle here, and I think I know why that is actually for Hartbury. I'll explain that in a second. Then we've got our benchmark groups. Now, that's a bit of an erroneous one, but all of the benchmark groups that you can see with NMR, everybody has access to. So these are specific groups of about 50 herds in each one that meet the criteria of that group title. They've been recording for at least 5 years. We do update them from time to time, but they are, you know, as descriptive of that title as possible. If you are an advisor, you have obviously lots of clients on your herd companion. You can create your own benchmark groups, which is where this one's potentially come in, and you can choose whichever herds you like, whichever combinations of herds, and as many groups as you like for, you know, different aspects of your herds, because you'll know, you know, if it's geography, if they're a particular system type, you know, robots even, you can compare whatever you like on theirs, on those. So if I go to benchmarks, just to show you briefly, actually I may not be able to do it. Oh, there we go, create new group, and then you'll have a list of herds and you can just drag them across to form, you know, to fall into that group. Okay, so if I go back to my NMR herds, so this herd is about, I think, under 300 cows now, so I'll just pick this one. Of course, the key here is you've got to pick a group that's relevant for your herd, otherwise you can look very, very good or very, very bad. So with our group selected, my herd, is the pink line, and as I hover the mouse, you can read off there the range and the averages and what the current herd is. The average for that group is the dark green, and the range of the group is the light green area. So we've got one herd as high as here. This is cell count, remember, 500, and it's a rolling 12-month average. Bit interesting. Right down to another herd, which is, you know, toddling along very nicely here at about 75. Now that little peak there, in fairness to Hartbury, I think what happened is when they were block calving or moving to that block calving element, back in June 21, I think they were up 3 cows in milk that were really not milking very much at all. So one recording was very few cows indeed, hence, you know, the sort of peak here. So it's perhaps a bit harsh on them to look like it's in trouble. So that gives us a graphical picture, and then underneath you can actually read off here for that time frame. So current herd here, the range is from 85 to 361, average 190, and we're running at 164. So you can chop and change your elements, whatever you want to look at. So if we did age at first calving, still compared to that benchmark group, or you could change your group as well. There we go. So we're well below the average for that one. And in fact, again, things have altered as a management program has changed. So that's fairly consistent now. Then we can look at KPIs at a glance, which will give all of the parameters together. Here we are. So still on that benchmark group for Holstein herds, 100 to 200 cows. You can change it here. And it's at this point that you'll really see if you're in an appropriate group for you, because if you've got a load of black arrows, I've just got one, but it means that you are outside the range of that group. So here, it might be that you are, you know, generally better than all of the others or worse equally. So the lowest herd in this group is 43 for a culling rate. We're actually 46. Now, culling is always a tricky one because, you know, we might have had instances of TB, something like that, which is always going to affect our culling rate. So we won't worry too much about that one at the moment, but you can see for the green block where you sit for everything together compared to the range. So the range now is this blue line from here to here. At any point, you can export these tables and graphs out of Herd Companion. And if we then drill down one more time, comparison by herd gives us a real flavour of where all the other herds sit. So average age at first calving, we've got our 50 herds here. So H is the herd, so anonymous herd number. We are always in yellow, so you can see where you sit for that one. And then the raw data below. There we go. So H1 is my herd. We've got, as I say, about 50 other herds. We don't know who they are, but they meet the criteria of that group, as I say. We've got the average for those 50, and then you can see on the graph exactly where you sit, and the same for the table. These headers all move up and down. So if I look at cell count, I can see my positioning, yeah, dead center really on that one. Or if I change the graph here, it's so more visual. So much more visual there. There we go. So we're you know, 60th percentile, I suppose, for that. Pretty good. Okay, so there's lots of interactivity on this one to have a look and, you know, change the settings and see what's going on. Just coming over to my control panel now. Do we have any questions? So those are the topics I wanted to cover today. If you're frantically typing, I will hang on for a little minute. So there is lots more in Herd Companion anyway, but these two webinars give us a good overview of certain bits that you might not have seen recently. Got no questions at all at the minute. Okay, or if you want to put up your hand, you can, of course. No, all looks good. Oh, here we go. Yes, email you the recording, absolutely. So with these webinars, when you register, it then pings you an email for the joining the webinar, and they also it keeps reminding you, you know, webinar tomorrow, webinar in 1 hour. And what I do is I set it so that the video is, you know, it's automatically recorded, and the recording will go to you whether you attend or not. So if you register for any of my webinars, then you can almost forget about it, because it will A, remind you, and B, it will send you the link if you come or if you don't. So that's fine, but I can certainly do that anyway as well. And I'll also, as I say, everybody that registers for this one, I'll send you the link for the first one as well, so you can sort of watch the two together. So no problem there. Okay, you're very welcome. Anything else from anyone else? Or if you've got any other topics that you think, oh gosh, I'd really love Kath to go through something else on Herd Companion, I don't get, or I haven't looked at very deeply, you know, give me a shout. We did cover yoni's last time as well, so that's quite a popular area, but there's a few more bits on that actually, again, in depth, so I might do that next time. But yeah, if you're all done, that's fantastic. Looks okay. Excellent. Well, so if you think of anything else, do drop me a line, and thank you all very much for attending today. I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye for now.